Welcome to Three Con Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. So there was this interesting thing that I noticed. It just popped into my brain. I was scrolling through my Twitter account when I saw that the Raw ratings had come in. And I was like, I don't care about the Raw ratings. But then when I looked at the headlines, of course, and I saw one one company, Post Wrestling, talks about how Raw did one of its best ratings of the year. And then I flip over to Wrestling Inc. and I see WWE's ratings drop. And I'm like, huh? Are they looking at the same thing? And so I clicked it, and yeah, they reported the same number. The difference is how they interpreted it, right? Post Wrestling was talking about the demographics. Well, the demographics and the ratings were both down, but they had still did very well. They still won the night off of everything. You know, they were above the NBA, which was on at the same time apparently. I didn't know that. So I was sitting here thinking to myself, and I was just like, isn't that crazy? How the media could have you trying to react one way or the other to the same information. Like, and I just did a little experiment when I went and I looked, and I saw that there was quite a few wrestling journalist sites that were kind of skewing one way or the other. Mostly they were skewing negative. There was a lot of them who were just like viewership for Raw or SmackDown, whatever, Raw and yada yada yada. That's pretty neutral. But one telling you that, trying to skew it negative, like, oh, ratings go down, and you're looking and you're like, well, the ratings are down about 100,000, but the NBA was on, so it was like, what's the big deal? But one of them just felt weird, and it made me think of this saying that I heard, and I may have said it a couple of times on this channel, but I'm gonna say it again. This is what's called two movies, one screen. It was basically something I heard Scott Adams say. It was a very interesting story where you get the same information, but you get a different skew, right? Like you see, like when you go into the movies, this is how I shouldn't have to explain the metaphor, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's like if people are interpreting information differently, right? Both are going to say we're just delivering the facts, but both of them are kind of skewed, right? They're skewing through the headline, not necessarily through the delivering of the information, but through the headline, because they're trying to get a certain type of reaction. And so I did a little bit of experiment. I didn't write down who did this and who didn't, but I can tell you SES Scoops skewed negative. No DQ was a little bit more neutral. Fightful skewed negative. PW Insider, I believe, also skewed negative. And it was really weird. Like, when you look at the ratings, they were not down that much considering the competition. Considering there's NBA stuff on. And I didn't know if it was NBA season or not. I don't know. But it's just, for some reason, it bothered me that I went through my Twitter account and I see two headlines talking about the same fucking subject in a completely different way. Like, is it the best rating that they've had all year? One of the best ratings they've had all year, which is probably it might be. But is it down from last week? Yes, it is. So it's like, how do you report that? Do you report it fairly and just say, well, it's down slightly, which I've seen some people say is down slightly. Then you see also some places they don't cover the demographics. They'll cover just the viewership, And I know for sure on Wednesdays they talk about demographics, but when it comes to Raw or something like that, they just talk about overall viewership. And they say, oh, well, Raw dipped below 2 million viewers. And they said the same thing about SmackDown. It dipped below 2 million viewers. And I just I squinted and I was like, they were about 100,000 viewers off of the previous week. Granted, there was a big media thing with but when I started thinking that way, right? And I was like, oh, the NBA was on, the Chauvin trial was going on. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Right? And that's what I kind of started thinking. And I was like, these headlines are written in a way where either A, you're going to make excuses, or B, you're going to start coming up with defenses, right? Or you're going to start being happy, you know? So I really started thinking about that. Like, how much of this tribalism in the wrestling, space is dictated by people who are being skewed online by headlines, by these editors and these writers in chief, or whatever the fuck, editor in chief, not writer in chief, who write these goddamn headlines and telling people what to think about this subject, you know? And it's pretty wild, because I never really thought about that before. Like, I'm one of those people that don't really trust the media. I'm one of those enemy of the people kind of folks. When somebody monopolizes information, they can disseminate it however they choose. Which is why I'm not saying that one thing is right and one thing is wrong. They can disseminate the information however they choose. The fact of the matter is, both are going to claim that we're just presenting factual information, without mentioning that they're skewing the information by trying to make it sound negative or trying to make it sound positive, when it could be either one or it could be both. And there is very little in the way of analysis in these subjects. They try to deliver the raw numbers, right? And I've seen this before. Remember, there used to be back when AEW and NXT was going head to head, and people would try to excuse if NXT ever got close, or if NXT actually won, they would post excuses. So when you start having this, like Alvarez or whatever, they would just post, the viewership or whatever. And then when the viewership started getting closer, they stopped and just started posting the demographics. Like, that's another thing that they do. When you started seeing that stuff, you started saying, okay, viewership doesn't matter. We're only talking about the demographics. And then, you're like, oh, I see the spin. And it's like, there's a lot of people you see a lot of times where wrestling fans are jaded. You don't trust nothing. Like, if somebody says something to you, you don't trust it. But if it comes from a wrestling journalist, all of a sudden they believe it, right? If it comes from, what was this, Meltzer, they believe it. For instance, I saw another story where they talked about the Ben Askren and Jake Paul Google Trends and how it compares to WrestleMania. And, look at the Google Trends for Ben Askren and Jake Paul's fight. And I was like, why are we comparing that to WrestleMania? What's the benefit of that? It's about, again, skewing negative. It's like, oh, it's skewed higher than WrestleMania. And I was kind of like, so what? Like, so what? Like, why do we care? And I've seen people do this stuff all the time. I see it, like, people are talking about, like, oh, well, look at AEW did this big rating. Raw should be worried. I'm like, they're not on at the same time. They're not even on the same night. What the fuck? Why are we comparing two different events? That's going to be 2 days apart. That's going up against two different networks. That's not on at the same time. You only compare two things that are on at the same time. That's like if the New Jersey Nets is playing the New York Knicks and they beat them 80-0, and then the Detroit Pistons beat the Indiana Pacers 100-0, and then I started saying, oh, the Pistons, they sure did whoop the ass of the Nets. I'm like, what the fuck? They're not even playing each other. What the hell am I talking about? So when people are like, are doing that, and I started noticing that shit, I'm like, why are we spinning this way? You are not competing with something if you're on at different times. WrestleMania was a week before this. Who cares if and then it's not even pro wrestling, it's fucking boxing or whatever the fuck they were doing. It wasn't much boxing from what I saw, And most of the time that was a lot of the response that I saw was people being negative about the show. But whatever. I don't want to get into that. The big picture here is that there is people there's an old saying, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But then there's another saying, Lies, damn lies, and statistics. When you get information, you can do whatever you want with it. You can twist that information any way that you want. It takes for the public, the person who is consuming the information, to be able to say what you're doing is manipulative and it's bullshit. I don't give a fuck about AEW's ratings in comparison to Raw. They're not on at the same time. So I don't care. If they were on at the same time, then we could have a conversation. They're 2 days apart. And then you have Raw's rating, which is greatly affected by being 3 hours. So, like, what? Because the third hour is almost always a drop off, which affects the viewership, affects the average. Because all you're looking at is averages anyway. But the reason why I don't care about ratings is not just because people will spin these things one way or the other, but also because Nielsen is shit, right? Nielsen is just garbage. And I don't want to, maybe one day I'll go through how Nielsen is garbage. I don't care. I just thought that was weird that I see the same information and you get it interpreted or bird fed back to you in a very strange and twisted way. Now, I couldn't tell you whether it was the best rating of the year, third best rating of the year. I couldn't tell you. Was it down from the previous week? I think so. But could both of those things be true? Yes. Right? So you have to say, well, the way that they did this was a judgment call. They were looking to fish for responses. A lot of them have comment sections. So they post these data dumps and they say, oh, well, they'll give you the skew that, oh, it's going down. And then they'll go and have the comment section full of people like, oh, the ratings dropped. That means the women can't draw. That means this, that means that. And they're trying to jump to all these conclusions based off of, the rating going down for 1 week or the rating going up for another week. And it's like nobody in business looks at spikes, heavy spikes, and then makes business decisions. They look at trends, right? They look at year over year, month over month, that kind of thing. So when people started really getting all giddy about the AEW rating, I was like, okay, cool. We'll see if it sticks. Let's give it some time. They were trending towards 600 viewers, 600,000 viewers. And then it magically doubled. And everybody's like, oh, this is the real audience. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We don't know that. Let's give it time. Let's give it a month or so. All right, if they can get like 1 million viewers a month straight, then we can have a conversation. But let's not overreact because they had one swing up or one swing down. Let's not. And that's also why I don't care about ratings. So this video ended up being about ratings and the media. But it was only intended to be about the media. But ultimately, you have to watch how these people are feeding you information. They write deceptive headlines. They write shock headlines. They're trying to get your attention. They want you to click that node, because that helps their advertising. The clickbait. I have no interest in that. That's also why I don't trust wrestling media. I have to, sometimes I'll do a video on something and nobody cares. And I'll just do a video on it because who cares? But when it's something serious like these lawsuits that I talk about, or, when we talk about these serious civil rights cases or these information where people are talking about they've been raped, these, the lawsuits or the criminal cases and stuff like that, I look at multiple sources because you can't trust anybody's information except your own, or at least, somebody that has built up trust with you in that situation. And sometimes you have to realize when people are trading in your trust. And that's what a lot of these wrestling websites do. They try to get attention. There's some wrestling websites I don't even bother to go to because I know that 90% clickbait. Ringside News is one of them. I don't even follow. Like usually, I follow wrestling journalists online, so I'll know like what's in the grapevine. I don't even follow Ringside News. It's worthless, It's a lot of wrestling websites that are like that. You know, I just glance at them because there might be something there. But ultimately, I think people need to be more aware. And that's what the purpose of this video is. The purpose of this video is not to dig on Post Wrestling or Wrestling Inc. for how they write their articles. I don't give a shit. You know, write your opinion pieces, your Q&As. I don't give a fuck. If I want to do, a video on something that was said, I will do it. But I don't treat anybody like it's the Bible. And I just want to tell people, like, look, you need to be careful, because there's going to be people out there who are trying to manipulate you. And it's complete bullshit, and it's not fair, because you're taking advantage of people who, A, want information, or B, they're taking advantage of your trust. And that's absolute trash. All right, man. Thank you guys for your time. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for your time. Also, go to the description, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to the channel via Subscribestar, or send a donation via Cash App. Either one is good. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, shed light. I know what that's like.